Something that's an issue for a lot of folks is the continuation of the driving privilege, and our next guest is an expert at helping people to keep that driver's license. Joining us today is Rob Collier, President and owner of California Drivers Advocates. Welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good to have you with us today. So, a little bit of an overview, some of the services that you folks provide.
We were founded essentially to give California drivers an opportunity to aggressively and proactively defend themselves at administrative hearings with the DMV. We all know that the DMV is the place where you go to get your driver's license. It's where you go to register cars and to transfer ownership of your vehicles. But what a lot of people don't know is that there's an entire enforcement arm within the DMV that employs thousands of people up and down the state, and their job is essentially to focus on a driver and make determinations whether or not they're safe to drive. And if they decide they're not safe to drive, the DMV will move to suspend that person's driver's license.
We think of law enforcement as the people who say, oh, red lights and siren come on, pull over to the side, license and registration please, and that whole process. But you're saying that really the decision on keeping your license is with these folks with the DMV.
That's exactly correct. I mean, law enforcement is often the first step into the process, but it is the Department of Motor Vehicles who has the ultimate authority of whether or not you keep your license.
I understand part of that's known as the Office of Driver Safety.
Correct.
And that's that arm of the DMV that handles that.
It is. There are 14 offices that stretch from Reading to the Mexican border, and they have a number of hearing officers who are essentially DMV judges that sit in judgment of you at these hearings.
We would think that there'd be some red flags or some things that would cause that process to go into effect with somebody. When a person's at a certain age, is it automatically you're over a certain age, they're going to question you, or what are some of the factors involved there?
Well, the DMV actually publishes that there is no maximum driving age. There's no point where you supposedly become a focus of their attention, but it's not true. The fact of the matter is that after the age of 70, you no longer have the privilege of renewing your driver license by mail or by internet. You have to go into a field office, and it's during these contacts that you can actually be evaluated by an undertrained clerk making determinations about how clear your speech is and how quickly you respond to questions.
Right.
So it's a very precarious process.
I know a lot of people are concerned about passing the eye test. Is that one reason they could take away your license?
It is. Vision and vision-related medical problems are one of the primary focuses of the DMV.
Do they have the right to ask me what medications I'm taking?
They do.
Do I have to answer?
At the risk of losing your driving privilege, yes. I mean, you can say no, and they'll say, fine, thank you very much, and give me your license.
Right. So you better be truthful on that then. Would they follow up and check with your doctor, make sure you've given them the whole list?
They have to get a signed authorization from you to access your medical records, but there again, if you don't give them that signed authorization, you do so at the risk of your license.
Sort of like people that refuse the breathalyzer test in the field. They can refuse that test, but they're going to go to jail.
That's right. You can refuse the test, but there's a consequence for that decision.
So think before you react out of anger or frustration, perhaps.
That's right.
I understand there's something called a notice of re-examination. That's issued by whom?
Well, it depends. There's a notice of re-examination, and then there's a notice of priority re-examination. The notice of re-examination generally comes from the Department of Motor Vehicles when they have received some information from a variety of sources that an individual driver may not be safe to drive, and that normally comes in the mail. The notice of priority re-examination, on the other hand, normally is issued by a police officer at the scene of a traffic stop or an accident.
Okay. So could you find yourself in an accident situation and have your license taken at that moment?
Depending on the circumstances, absolutely. California peace officers are authorized by the Department of Motor Vehicle to seize a driver's license in a certain set of circumstances.
Okay. I know insurance companies rate people if they're a fair driver, a good driver, an excellent driver. There's a term that comes up in your business called a negligent operator. What's the definition of that?
The California DMV monitors an individual driver's driving history based upon a point system. So the DMV will assign an individual point count to an individual type of a violation. For instance, you run a stop sign, you get a point. If you get a DUI arrest, it's 2 points. Okay? If you accumulate too many points, within a specified period of time, the DMV will recognize you as a negligent operator. They will automatically move to suspend your driver's license. They'll issue you a notice of negligent operator, and then they will challenge you to come in and prove to them why they're wrong.
Okay, so that's something that's a procedure that would happen through the DMV, and again, you'd be notified on that, unless it's the priority one, which is on the scene of the incident, perhaps.
Yeah, the negligent operator essentially is just focused upon an accumulation of points.
Yeah.
The notice of priority reexamination normally occurs when a police officer pulls you over or is investigating an accident, and at the scene, he sees or hears something that gives him concern that you are an immediate hazard to the public.
So if someone were to say, for example, oh man, I'm taking this new blood pressure medication that kind of makes me dizzy, that's probably not something you'd want to say in front of a police officer.
Huge red flag.
Yeah, you'd find yourself thumbing your way home perhaps on that one. We talked about alcohol consumption almost every week here on the program. Usually on Thursday or Friday we get a notice from the Orange County Sheriff's Department about a DUI checkpoint someplace here in Orange County, a lot of them right here around our local area. I think a lot of our viewers here have been adults long enough to be sensible, I think, about drinking, but I know that's one of the reasons that can cause problems out there is drinking and driving.
Well, that's right. You know, the California law determines that you can be arrested for DUI if you're impaired or if you have an alcohol level of 0.08 or greater. And a lot of people don't take into consideration how very little alcohol it takes to get to a 0.08. Also, breath machines are notorious for giving ghost readings or false readings. And so you could just be out to dinner with your wife, have a steak dinner, a couple of glasses of wine, and spend the night in jail.
Yeah. And in some cases, if you're by yourself, your car gets impounded and there's legal fees and jail and all kinds of repercussions from that.
Well, that's right. I mean, if we're talking just about the DUI, there can be fines and penalties to the court. There are reissuance fees to the DMV, an ungodly increase in your insurance rates. It can be quite costly.
Right. You mentioned some of these things come to us by mail. If we get something like this, a reexamination, do we have a time frame to reply on that or to get involved?
Yes, again, depending upon what the factors are, in a notice of reexamination, the DMV will normally give you a period of 10 to 14 days to contact them to schedule a hearing. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, the notice of priority reexamination is much more dangerous because that requires that the driver be in front of a DMV hearing officer within 5 days. Not schedule the hearing, actually be at the hearing within 5 days.
So almost immediate response, which could be rough if you've had a traumatic accident or something.
That's right.
Okay. Let's talk a bit about your company, some of the things you do to protect people that want to hang on to that driver's license, that think they have a legitimate case. How do you go to bat for them?
Well, you know, it depends on what it is that the client is facing, but essentially the first thing we do is we interview the client and we find out what it is that the DMV is upset about. We contact the DMV immediately to preserve the driving privilege and to schedule a hearing. We conduct our own investigation to see if there are witnesses or medical professionals who can give more clarity to the situation. Then, depending upon what the individual client needs, we can prepare them for a written test, a behind-the-wheel test. We can certainly educate them as to what can happen at a DMV hearing because they can be very unkind. And then at the actual hearing, we sit right there with them and we represent them at the hearing.
Do you speak for them or do you advise them on what to say?
Actually, it's a kind of a combination of the two. These DMV hearings, if run appropriately, are run like a mini trial. So I present my own evidence, my own witnesses, I examine my client, but I have prepared them for the cross-examination that will come from the hearing officer.
Just like what happened in a court case. If you were representing somebody in a legal court case, there would be preparation time with the attorney and the client.
That's true, and then there's follow-through afterward, yes.
Right. A bit about the background, experience you folks have, how you folks got into this line of work?
Well, I'm not the only face of the firm. I have a combined total experience of about 30 years in law enforcement and defending people at DMV hearings. I have former DMV hearing officers who work with us, former police accident reconstructionists, We've got 2 forensic scientists who can work on issues of blood or breath. So everything from basic investigation to representing you at the hearing is all covered.
And I would imagine the fee schedule depends on how much work you have to do.
It does, it does. But we've been doing this long enough that we can fairly well anticipate what the work is going to entail. We are far cheaper than standard law firms, and we are willing to work with mature drivers and give discounts for veterans and seniors.
Can you assist in a bail situation?
Our company can't do it individually, but we do have the contacts with a number of bail agents that can help.
Okay, sounds like some interesting information. Not that any of us want to have to deal with that, but if we do, you folks are available over there. It sounds like an interesting line of work. That's California Drivers Advocates, and again, we have the number there on your screen, 1-888-281-5244. You can find out more information by giving them a call. And again, we need to be careful out there. There's a lot of new laws that come into effect every January that we're expected to immediately get up, watch the Rose Parade, watch the Rose Bowl game, and go out and drive and know all those new laws on January 1st. So
that's right.
That's a challenge, and if we break one of those, we might find ourselves needing your services. So we thank you for sharing some information with us today. Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. Again, that's Rob Collier, and you can find out more about it by giving them a call, 1-888-281-5244, California Drivers Advocates. Our program continues for you here on Channel 6 right after this brief timeout.
If you've received a notice of reexamination or priority reexamination from the California Department of Motor Vehicles, then you already know they're working towards suspending your freedom to drive. Convincing the DMV of your ability to drive can be frustrating and frightening, but you don't have to fight them alone. Call the California Drivers Advocates, where our team of experts will guide you through each step of the process and get you back on the road. If the DMV is your problem, California Drivers Advocates is your solution. For more information, call 888-281-5244 or search online keywords DMV Defenders.